Welcome to Spring Valley on a very glorious and perfect day for doing a prairie burn. Yeah, you heard that correctly. About twice a year we come out here when the weather is absolutely perfect like today, when there's little to no wind, and the prairie is ready to be burned because the ground is dry enough to be able to sustain a fire. There's two different ways that we protect the buildings from catching fire and the prairie fire from getting away from us, and that is to mow the edges of the prairie so that the edges are so short that they won't burn, and we also have people out here with water accessible to them to be able to contain the fire. Usually we burn on a day when there's little to no wind, and that's why today is such a glorious day. And what you're going to be seeing are yellow-clad men and women out there who have been trained intensively and extensively to be able to keep themselves safe in a prairie burn. Sometimes these fires are 25 or 30 feet high, and they burn very, very quickly. Sometimes people ask about the animals that live in the prairie. Most of the animals here either burrow into the ground, and the prairie moves so quickly that it doesn't bother them, or else they can flee away, either by flying or by running away. So the animals are protected, the people are protected, and the only thing that actually burns are the prairie plants. And actually, that's a good thing because the plants then immediately turn into enriching the soil. The ashes help the next year's growth to be even better than this year's growth. I'm here now with Matt McBrien, who I guess we could say is the chief cook of the prairie. He's our trainer. He's the one who leads the prairie burn, decides which days are good enough to burn on. And what would you say? The wind's coming up now. Did you have any wind problems today?
No, actually, we had a pretty good day as far as wind goes. It was a little bit light earlier, but it kicked up when we needed it to.
People might be interested in knowing why I even asked that question. Is there such a thing as having too much wind or too little wind?
Yeah, depending on the situation. Usually with our prairies, we don't burn if the winds are above 15 miles an hour, whereas in our woodlands, we like at least 15 to 20 miles an hour.
What's the difference?
Well, in the prairie, you're in a wide open space, so there's nothing to knock the wind down, as opposed to in the woodland, all the trees kind of interfere with your wind and kind of slow things down a little bit. So, and you're burning fuels that are lower to the ground in the woodland as well. So you don't catch as much wind close to the ground. You need a little bit stronger wind to push that along.
I was noticing as I came out that a whole portion of the prairie here actually didn't burn. Can you explain why?
Yeah, that's the top of the prairie behind me is it's kind of a stemmy matrix of goldenrods that typically don't burn very well, whereas the area that's blackened behind me is mostly prairie grasses that carry a fire really well.
Do you see a difference in the parts of the prairie here when we burn and when we don't burn?
I do. I mean, for one thing, it keeps out a lot of the woody species that would otherwise, kind of take over the prairie. So really burning in our prairies is necessary for the prairie itself to survive. How
long did it take you today to actually do the burn?
Oh, geez, I think from the time we started, it was probably maybe 30, 45 minutes, something like that. I think the guys are still working on it a little bit back there, doing what is called mop up. It's just what we do following a burn, just to make sure anything that's smoldering is out completely.
You sort of anticipated my next question. The burn itself was a very short period of time, but the setup beforehand and the setup or the follow-up afterwards really do take a lot of time.
It really does. I mean, everything from all our notifications that we do to the police department and battalion chief, Cook County Department of Environment, that's all done the morning of our burns typically, as well as any resident notifications that we do. We let them know the day of our burn that we're burning that day, as well as ahead of time as well, so that way they're aware of our range of areas that we're going to be burning in.
How big a crew did you have today?
I believe we had 7 today, which is pretty typical for a prairie burn of this size. Anything larger than what we did today, we look for at least 10 or 12 people.
Little wildlife there, liking the look, huh? Liking the smell. Ode to fire, right?
That's right.
What's it like when you go home with your clothes, huh?
Well, yeah, I mean, definitely you carry it with you, that's for sure.
I'm here with Lynn Eikenberry, one of our staunch volunteers who has done more prairie burns than I could probably count. Can you estimate how many you've done?
I've been doing them since, the 80s, so...
Okay.
How many?
Okay, I guess we could do the math on that one. Tell me, how many trainings have you actually attended in order to be able to participate with Matt in a burn?
I've attended at least 3 or 4. If you continue burning year after year, you don't have to go every year, but every 3 or 4 years you go for a refresher course.
And how long is that course, just to give people an idea that it does take time?
It lasts pretty much most of the day. We break for lunch and then have a little bit after lunch.
And what's the best part of the day, the lunch or the training?
I like the training. I mean, I just bring my own lunch, so it's bag lunch. But
So what do you think about prairie burns? I know you also do programs here for us with the school children, explaining the prairie, the ecosystem, why we do what we do here. What is it about the prairie burn that makes you want to participate in it?
the renewal of the prairie. When I started here, there was no prairie. It was cornfield and soybeans. And over the years, it's become prairie. And without the burns and the planting and the seed collecting, we wouldn't have the prairie that we have today.
And that in itself is interesting that you brought up that there's more to it than just burning the prairie. We have to actually collect the seeds in the fall and then save them for springtime, or else actually grow them in the greenhouse. And you participate in all parts of that, don't you?
Yes, I enjoy being out in nature and doing the conservation activities.
Do you do any of the transplanting of the baby plants when they get started in spring?
I do help in the greenhouse. I've done some of the seed planting and transplanting in the greenhouse, and then the transplanting out on the prairies and in the woodlands.
And I just thought of one more step, the cleaning of the seeds. Explain that. I'm sure people don't realize that we clean seeds in order to be able to plant them in the prairie.
When you collect the seeds, you get a lot of stems and leaves and what we call chaff. So you have to rub the seeds over a screen that keeps the chaff up above. The seeds fall through the screen, and then you have mostly seeds to plant rather than leaves and stems.
And go one step further. What do we do with many of those seeds?
Some of the seeds are broadcast and just scattered. The seeds are sorted out by, of course, what kind they are. They're not mixed together. And they're planted in little flats, and then from the flats they're transplanted to little plugs that will eventually go out into the prairie.
So the long and the short of it is prairie restoration is a lot of work. And the one other thing I was thinking of, some of those seeds spend the winter in our coolers and our refrigerators, don't they? We have to simulate the fact that the seeds would be outside in winter if they were out here. So any last words you'd like to say about the burn? Was it a good one today? I know what Matt said. What was your opinion as a volunteer actually working it?
It was a well-controlled burn. Everything went as planned, which is all you can ask for in a burn.
So here we are at Spring Valley after the burn. And it was quite an amazing sight, I'm sure. I wasn't out here to see it today, but in April you'd get an opportunity to see it again if you come out to Spring Valley. I'm not sure if it's the first Saturday in Spring Valley or the second. My memory kind of says it's the first, but just check the Park District brochure when it comes out for spring. And we have a nighttime burn, so if this was impressive, you should see it at night when it's just the sun's setting and it's just getting to be dark. Come out to Spring Valley next spring and see how well the prairie looks, how beautiful, because these plants have provided the soil for next year.